This is the ninth in a series of 9 professional development sessions offered by the Keystones to Opportunities Grant for Pittsburgh Public Schools. This presentation is designed to introduce all PPS teachers to information and approaches for supporting students with special needs. Given the expectations for students graduating from Pennsylvania schools in the 21st century and the need for all students to be career and college ready at the end of grade 12, educators will need to rethink the ways by which they approach literacy instruction at all levels, including early learning for students ages birth through 5 years of age. Pittsburgh Public Schools received $10 million over the course of 5 years. The funding from this grant supports a new comprehensive literacy plan for the district, monthly professional development sessions tailored to the needs of our district, new diagnostic assessments, the Dibbles Next and Grade, literacy specialists who provide RTII guidance, data analysis, PD, instruction, and Common Core State Standard support in all PPS buildings, and HEAT classroom observations for the targeted grade levels. Let's quickly see how far we've come in this, our first year with the KtO resources. So far, these sessions are not only meant to improve practice as we transition into Common Core State Standards, but they also serve at the awareness level of what is happening behind the scenes as content supervisors and KtO specialists create the district's new literacy plan. Anything learned in these sessions can be applied immediately. Today, we will be focusing on session number 9, Supporting Learners with Special Needs. This presentation will highlight best practices for both special education and regular education students. This 9th module is considered a base for supporting struggling students. Much of what we discuss and explore will confirm what you already know and do. We hope you will find some piece of new information or an idea that is used in a different way. Take a moment to review this slide's content. Pause the webcast now. Please refer to the slide. The content is an excerpt from the Pennsylvania Comprehensive Literacy Plan. There must be high expectations for all learners and a belief that all are capable of gaining literacy skills that enable them to be successful as adults. Instruction must address the full range of learners, must be differentiated to meet each child's needs, and requires a well-integrated system connecting general, compensatory, gifted, and special education. If time permits, take a moment to discuss why the words or phrases are important. This statement summarizes again that we believe all students can increase their ability to read and comprehend texts with supports. Please take a moment to read the statement. Simply put, our goal is for all students to be literate. Pause the webcast and take a moment to read these powerful statements. Consider the implications they have for our students. Watch this video and discuss it with your group.
I know, that's why I'm putting the video up. Looks funny. Oh. And when they get up there, they really run.
Oh, hush up. See? All I was doing was helping.
Some possible comments you may have identified are these. The man did not simply pick up the ducklings and do the work for them. However, he did provide a support so that the ducklings could accomplish their task and join the group. The mother duck did not move on until everyone was with her. The brain is a very complex organ. We know this. No two are alike. The images we have of the learning brain using PET scans and other imaging such as functional MRIs demonstrate this diversity and complexity. Yet we persist in designing learning experiences with a non-existent average brain in mind. Consider this. There is no such thing as an average athletic shoe. We design shoes to meet diverse needs, i.e. foot size, arch support, running versus walking versus court styles, etc. Yet we continue to approach instruction with an average learner in mind. If we were to design lessons from the start which meet the needs of a broad range of learners, everyone would benefit. Universal design for learning theory teaches us that each classroom will have learners who will struggle with particular tasks as well as display talents with other tasks. So how do we get all learners to be literate? Does that mean the same for everyone? What are the issues? There are numerous issues that affect students, including educational disadvantages, physical disabilities, lack of key chunks of education for one reason or another. What is needed? Appropriate differentiated instruction, additional supports, and opportunities to learn in multiple ways. This graphic organizer categorizes 3 areas that are needed to support all students in becoming literate. Discuss. Every learner needs access to his learning environment, to the content, to experiences, etc. For some, providing access is enough. For instance, if you have 2 broken legs, a wheelchair, and an accessible building, you will have access to the content and learning. But access means more than physical access. Students need to be able to access the core curriculum, rich language, and new knowledge. Some need more scaffolds and supports. These will vary according to a student's need and even to different situations and days. And everyone needs appropriate, effective instruction in literacy. Again, that looks different depending on the age and need of the child. For a toddler, it means being exposed to rich language and experiences. For an adolescent who has missed learning how to decode words, this often means intensive, effective instruction in decoding. First, we will consider what access for all means. Looking at these 4 questions, notice the last, access to core curriculum. What does that mean? What about a child who cannot read? How does he or she access the core level text and instruction? We need to continue to refine our ability to differentiate instruction, meeting the needs of all students. This chart represents 4 particular barriers to the learning environment that might affect student access. Although one example for each barrier is listed, there are multiple barriers for each. Can you think of others? Follow along with the 4 categories of barriers. Reflect on how students navigate and gain information and experience from the physical classroom environment. How do we address student physical and sensory diversity? How do we provide multiple instructional materials for the diverse learning needs? How are we presenting content? Do we address the needs of diverse learners? What are the requirements for responding in this environment? How do we address students with diverse communication, language, and writing skills? Pause the webcast to discuss these questions. Guide your discussion around the 4 particular barriers which affect a student's access to the learning environment. To summarize, how do you, the teacher, get support to help your students get what they need? As teachers, we are empowered to recognize barriers and provide options for our students. We don't want to imply that learners with particular needs should be referred for support. We need to recognize and remove barriers to achievement for our students. The barrier we will consider when thinking about instruction for struggling learners is planning for diversity through scaffolds and supports. This chart addresses key principles of differentiated instruction, accommodations, and modifications. Each term holds its own specific meaning and should not be considered as interchangeable terms. When differentiating instruction, keep in mind that how you are differentiating the lesson needs to be respectful and meaningful. It is not a matter of having something to keep a student on task, but choosing a meaningful task which relates to the key concept or big idea of the lesson. In DI, there should be frequent collaboration among the teacher and students. Teachers must value the differences among their students and convey that message to all students about all students. An accommodation is an alteration in how an assignment is presented to or responded to by the student. Accommodations change how a student is gaining the knowledge or information or how he shows understanding. It does not substantially change the level or content of the material. The content is still the same. An accommodation may be to provide text in an alternative format, Braille, text-to-speech, or to provide time and flexible scheduling. The focus of the content remains the same, but accommodations are provided during the instruction and assessment. Making modifications changes what the student is learning. The text may be adapted or at a different grade level. The student may be given fewer problems or questions to answer. There may be fewer multiple choice questions, or the activity or assessment may look completely different. Excessive help debilitates. What does this mean? We need to provide the support needed for learning to occur, but also be cognizant of what is needed and then purposefully fade the help when appropriate. Remember, accommodations change the how and modifications change the what. Read each of the scenarios and determine if it represents a modification or accommodation. Pause the webcast now. The first scenario is a modification because what Isaac is learning and expected to do is changed. The second scenario is an accommodation because Jenny is showing evidence of the same learning with the same criteria, just through a different mode, the how. Providing all students with options for showing what they know is UDL. Also, we must remember to work with Jenny to fade the accommodation. The third scenario is an accommodation because Sam is completing the same task as his classroom peers. How he is approaching it is with the use of a scaffold, math manipulatives. Finally, the fourth scenario is a modification because what Hannah is learning and expected to do is different from the objectives for the other students. Our world is changing. We are currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented. For a video with a powerful message about resistance to changes in educational history, use the link printed on this slide. Assistive technology should be considered for every student with an IEP. Assistive technology is an important tool for students with mild and more severe disabilities. In fact, most colleges will tell you that students with disabilities arrive in post-secondary education without the skills in using the tools that are allowable accommodations for them, like text-to-speech and word completion and voice recognition. We have been more likely to assign a teacher's aide than provide the technology that can assist a student. It is not necessarily about using technology in the classroom. It is about transforming learning with the assistance of technology. The job of students across the school years, starting in preschool and moving forward, is often described in this way: learning to learn, then learning to read, then reading to learn. Regardless of the age, disability classification, or diagnosis of your students, ask yourself, do I have students who are reading well below grade level? How do they handle textbooks, which refers to how students physically deal with getting to the content? Do adults read to them? Do they ignore textbook-related assignments? How do they interact with trade books and the internet? How can we invite engagement with the content for students who have print disabilities? Remember, assistive technology does not eliminate the need to continue to teach reading skills. Assistive technology is about access, not instruction. An example of assistive technology that provides access to print is text-to-speech as a reading tool. Text-to-speech is not voice recognition, talking to your computer. It's hearing text while reading. Text-to-speech does not replace reading instruction. It is a way to give students access to text that may be too hard for them to read. Here is some of what we know from research about the use of text-to-speech. The first point is true of students with less severe reading problems. The third refers to middle school, followed by high school. If time permits, you can explore Natural Reader, which is an example of assistive technology. In the fall of 2013, the district will provide you with additional assistive technology resources for supporting learners with special needs.
Text-to-speech.
It lets you listen to text instead of reading on screen.
You can change the speed.
It lets you listen to text instead of reading on screen.
Then, change the voice.
Just one click, you can have your computer speak any text aloud in a clear, natural-sounding human voice.
You can use floating bar or add in toolbar to read aloud, Word, webpage, PDF, and email.
We do not have to use only high-tech supports. We use what works. Low-tech items that you use in your classroom are used to scaffold and support students. We use all kinds of low-tech items in the classroom. For instance, tennis balls are often on chairs to muffle noise distractions. Think about how you use highlighters, markers, pens, pencils, sticky notes, pencil grips, rulers, whiteboards, manipulatives, and countless other items to scaffold and support instruction. A very important area for students who struggle with literacy is appropriate and effective instruction. Unfortunately, this area is often dropped as students get older. It cannot be. Students who are not reading proficiently at grade level should receive targeted instruction in order to improve as long as they are in school. As we pointed out earlier, literacy provides connections to each other and our world. Research informs us that systematic, explicit instruction is most effective. Teachers should incorporate a mix of instructional strategies and supports, such as modeling, scaffolding, and think-alouds during instruction. Materials supports, such as graphic organizers and electronic devices, are also incorporated into instruction. Most importantly, providing students with immediate corrective feedback is essential to a student maximizing his or her ability. Systematic instruction gradually builds skills and ensures that students attain mastery before moving on. It provides a high level of teacher-student interaction with opportunities for practice and feedback. Lesson pacing can be adjusted for increased focus on targeted skills. Thus far in this module, we have considered the areas needed to be developed and mastered in order for an individual to read and comprehend. So how do we figure out where instruction needs to occur? This graphic representation should be familiar to you from the first module on data. Data guides us to where instruction needs to occur. Multiple measures of data provide the best path. The data gathered will provide us information and guide us to ask more questions and possibly seek more data in order to make informed instructional decisions. But collecting data alone will not increase achievement or influence instruction. We must use it often to ask more questions and dig even deeper. The following quote is taken from Using Data to Guide Instruction and Improve Student Learning. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but in education, information speaks volumes. Data analysis can provide a snapshot of what students know, what they should know, and what can be done to meet their academic needs. With appropriate analysis and interpretation of data, educators can make informed decisions that positively affect student outcomes. With the use of multiple measures, we can reflect about our practices for students who are struggling. Where is the student having difficulty? Often, what is on the surface will not guide instruction. How do I dig deeper? What data resources do I have? Where do I go for help? What are next steps? Let's consider some frameworks available to us. Universal Design for Learning is a framework. We are building in flexibility rather than retrofitting to adapt. We are removing barriers by anticipating the needs of all students. We recognize that one size does not fit all students. UDL assumes that students with varying needs will be involved in learning and that the curriculum, the goals, and the instructional materials and the assessments need to address this diversity. Put another way, the goals, the instructional methods, the instructional materials, and the assessments are not designed for the mythical average learner. Using the UDL framework, we present information and content in different ways. The what of learning. We differentiate the ways that students can express what they know, the how of learning. We stimulate interest and motivation for learning, the why of learning. And how do teachers do this? Teachers build in options up front. So what does this look like? Please refer to the slide content. When teachers provide flexible ways of presenting lessons, students have options for how they receive content. When teachers provide flexible methods of expression and assessment, students have options for how they demonstrate their learning. And when teachers provide flexible options for student engagement, students have choices which will engage interest and sustain effort. Where does RTII fit in? RTII is a multi-tier approach to the early identification and support of students with learning and behavior needs. It begins with high-quality instruction and universal screening of all children in the general education classroom. Struggling learners are provided with interventions at increasing levels of intensity to accelerate their rate of learning. For RTII implementation to work well, the following essential components must be implemented with fidelity and in a rigorous manner: high-quality, scientifically based classroom instruction, ongoing student assessment, and tiered instruction. Parental involvement is eagerly encouraged and welcomed. The least restrictive environment, or LRE, means special education is a service, not a place. Individualized education program teams make the decision in regards to where special education services are delivered. RTII and UDL are not programs. They are research-validated frameworks which consider best practices that would benefit all students. RTII and UDL share the objective of improving educational outcomes. Please refer to the slide content. Both recognize that poor achievement does not necessarily reflect disability, but rather may also reflect poor instruction. They both incorporate research-based practices. They both reflect the understanding that a curriculum that is effective for one student may not be effective for another. And RTII and UDL treat assessment as something that should inform instruction and intervention and consider once-a-year test scores insufficient to determine student ability. As we close, take a moment to reflect on the key components presented and consider what you are doing now. What will your next steps be? Watch this video and reflect on what challenges a student with reading difficulties faces and those that have overcome those challenges. Thank you for your participation in the final KtO PD module, Supporting Learners with Special Needs.